Imagine your sister publicly humiliating you at her lavish wedding, calling you charity in front of 300 guests, only for you to grab the mic and reveal you're the secret benefactor funding her entire fairy tale life. Hit like if you think Elara's revenge was epic. What happens next will shock you.
Thank you, Eliza. Sharing this still hurts, but I'm ready to tell how Nina's betrayal pushed me to reveal the truth that changed everything. The microphone feels heavy in my hands as I stand before 300 wedding guests, their champagne glasses frozen halfway to their lips. Nina's face has gone white beneath her carefully applied makeup, and Marcus looks like he's about to be sick all over his $1,000 tuxedo. My charity built this wedding, I say, my voice carrying clearly through the crystal chandeliers and silk-draped reception hall. The words taste like vindication and heartbreak all at once. But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here, to this moment where I'm about to destroy my sister's perfect day with the truth she never bothered to learn. 6 months ago, I was sitting in the Eliza Foundation's boardroom on the 42nd floor of the Promenade building, downtown Atlanta spread out like a glittering promise below the floor-to-ceiling windows. The mahogany conference table could seat 20, but only 7 of us held the power to distribute over $50 million in medical innovation grants each year. Next application, Dr. Harrison announced, sliding the folder across the polished wood. Oncological Dynamics Corporation, requesting $2.8 million for continued development of their revolutionary cancer detection device. I opened the file, my nursing-trained eyes scanning the technical specifications and patient trial data. After 15 years in oncology, I could spot promising research from pipe dreams. This wasn't just promising, it was groundbreaking. Early detection rates improved by 43%, survival rates climbing toward numbers I'd only dreamed of seeing. The clinical data is solid, I said, keeping my voice measured despite the excitement building in my chest. I've seen patients who could have benefited from this technology. The mortality reduction alone justifies the investment. The other board members nodded. They trusted my medical insight. They had no idea it came from countless 12-hour shifts in scrubs, holding hands with dying patients and celebrating with survivors. To them, I was Dr. Elara Japarids, the mysterious board member who'd inherited her position from her late mentor and spoke with unusual authority about patient care. All in favor. 7 hands rose. I signed my name with the Mont Blanc pen my grandmother left me, the same pen I used to sign Nina's rent checks each month. They see the ponytail and scrubs when I leave here for my night shift, never suspecting I hold the keys to millions in medical innovation funding that just saved thousands of lives. The irony wasn't lost on me. In 4 hours, I'd be back at Emory, checking on Mrs. Patterson's chemotherapy response and making sure Mr. Rodriguez's pain medication was adequate. 2 worlds, both mine, neither knowing the other existed. 3 months later, Nina burst into my apartment like a hurricane of excitement and Chanel No. 5. Her left hand extended before she'd even closed the door. "Elara, look, look, look." She was practically vibrating, her blonde hair, professionally highlighted at a salon I secretly helped fund, catching the afternoon light streaming through my modest living room windows. The ring was stunning. A 3-carat emerald-cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones, the kind of engagement ring that costs more than most people's cars. I felt my breath catch, not at the beauty of it, but at the pure joy radiating from my little sister's face. "Oh, Nina." I pulled her into a hug, breathing in her familiar vanilla perfume. "It's gorgeous, tell me everything." She launched into the story. Marcus had proposed at the country club, down on one knee beside the infinity pool, with half of Atlanta's social elite as witnesses. Her words tumbled over each other in excitement, and I found myself calculating in my head. The wedding she was describing would cost at least $60,000. Her marketing coordinator salary wouldn't cover half of that. "And you'll be my maid of honor," Nina continued, settling onto my second-hand couch like she was holding court. "Oh, we need to talk about dresses. I'm thinking blush pink, something elegant but not too." "Maid of honor?" I felt my heart swell with unexpected warmth. Despite everything, despite the distance that had grown between us, she still wanted me by her side for the most important day of her life. Of course, you're my sister. Who else would I choose? She squeezed my hands, her eyes bright with tears. I know we haven't always been close lately, but this is important. I need you there. Nina bounces like she's still the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, and my heart melts the same way. Even as part of me worries about fitting into her new world, I can't help but love her fierce determination to build the life she's always dreamed of. Of course, I said, pulling her into another hug. I'll be honored to stand beside you. The relief and joy on her face was radiant. She threw her arms around me again, and for a moment, we were just sisters again, not the successful one and the one left behind, just Elara and Nina against the world. The rehearsal dinner was held in the private dining room at Peachtree Hills Country Club, where Marcus's family had been members for 3 generations. Crystal glasses caught the light from the antique chandelier, and the conversation flowed as smoothly as the champagne. Crystal, naturally, at $400 a bottle. I sat at the family table in my navy dress, the nicest one I owned, watching Nina glow in her designer cocktail dress. She was in her element here, laughing at the right moments, touching Marcus's arm with practiced ease, playing the part of the perfect society bride. Across the room, I spotted Dr. Harrison from the Foundation's board, a distant relative of Marcus's family. He gave me a polite nod, unaware of our connection. The toasts began after the main course. Marcus's father spoke about family legacy. Nina's future mother-in-law welcomed her with cool politeness. Then Nina stood, champagne making her cheeks pink and her gestures loose. I just want to thank everyone for being here, she began, her voice carrying that slight slur that meant she'd had one glass too many. This has been such an incredible journey, and I'm so grateful to everyone who's supported us. She gestured around the table, her gaze landing on me with something that made my stomach clench. Everyone, this is my sister, Elara. She's still stuck in her little nurse job while I'm moving up in the world. Some people just can't evolve, you know. The laughter that followed was polite but pointed. I felt heat creep up my neck as 30 pairs of eyes assessed me, the charity case, the sister who couldn't keep up. Marcus shifted uncomfortably beside Nina, but he didn't correct her. No one did. But that's what makes family special, Nina continued, oblivious to the knife she'd just twisted. We love each other no matter what level we're operating on. Elara's always been there for me, in her own small way. I sat frozen, my wine glass halfway to my lips, as the conversation moved on around me. The woman next to me, Marcus's aunt, I think, gave me a pitying smile and asked if I enjoyed helping people in my little job. I excused myself before dessert, claiming an early shift the next morning. Nina barely looked up as I kissed her cheek goodbye, already deep in conversation about honeymoon destinations with Marcus's cousin. The valet brought my 10-year-old Honda around while Maseratis and Mercedes waited in line behind it. I tipped him with crumpled bills from my purse and drove home through Atlanta's empty streets, Nina's words echoing in my head. Some people just can't evolve. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep. Nina's rehearsal dinner humiliation played on repeat every time I closed my eyes, so I padded to my kitchen and made coffee, then settled at my laptop to distract myself with foundation work. I pulled up the grant database, intending to review applications for next week's meeting, but something nagged at me, a half-remembered detail from dinner conversation. Someone had mentioned Marcus's company, something about their recent expansion and new headquarters. I typed oncological dynamics into the search bar. The file opened immediately. Marcus Chen, CEO and founder. The same Marcus who was marrying my sister in 12 hours. The same Marcus whose company I'd personally championed for a $2.8 million grant renewal. I scrolled through the documents with growing disbelief. The grant wasn't just funding research, it was keeping the entire company afloat. Without it, Oncological Dynamics would fold within 6 months. The country club membership, the designer suits, the 3-carat engagement ring, all of it built on funding I'd approved. My signature stared back at me from the approval page, dated just 6 months ago. The same week Nina had complained about her rent being raised, the same week I'd quietly increased my monthly transfer to her account. I laughed, actually laughed, sitting alone in my dark apartment with the glow of my laptop screen illuminating the most devastating irony of my life. My signature, my vote, my charity built the very fortune Nina is using to reject me. The wedding was in 9 hours. I was supposed to stand beside my sister as she married a man whose success existed only because of my hidden influence, while she publicly dismissed me as a failure who couldn't evolve. I closed the laptop and stared out my window at the pre-dawn darkness, Atlanta's skyline twinkling like the diamonds on Nina's finger. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting indeed. The bridal suite at Chateau Elan buzzed with controlled chaos at 9 a.m. sharp. Makeup artists wielded brushes like surgical instruments, while bridesmaids fluttered around Nina, who sat enthroned before a gilt-framed mirror, already glowing with professional foundation and perfectly contoured cheekbones. I slipped through the door carrying coffee for everyone, a peace offering, though my hands shook slightly as I distributed the cups. Last night's discovery sat heavy in my chest, but maybe there was still time to fix this privately. Maybe Nina just needed to understand. Nina, I approached her chair carefully, aware of the audience around us. Could we have a moment? Just sisters. She didn't turn from the mirror. The makeup artist continued applying eyeshadow in sweeping strokes while Nina examined her reflection with clinical precision. I'm rather busy, as you can see. Her voice carried that crystalline tone she'd perfected over the past year, all sharp edges and cultivated distance. Whatever it is can wait until after the ceremony. It's about last night, the things you said were perfectly accurate. Now she did turn, but her gaze slid past me to address Rebecca instead. Becca, darling, did you confirm the photographer knows to get my good side during the processional? The dismissal hit like a physical blow. I tried again, lowering my voice. Nina, please, I know you're nervous, but we're family. We don't have to. Family? She laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. Elara, look around this room. Look at these women. She gestured to the bridesmaids, Rebecca with her trust fund and law degree, Caroline who summered in the Hamptons, Madison whose father owned half of Buckhead. Your pathetic nurse salary and dowdy appearance embarrass my new social circle. I can't have you dragging down the aesthetic of my new life. The makeup artist's brush paused for just a moment. Rebecca shifted uncomfortably by the window, but Nina's gaze remained fixed on her reflection, already turning back to more important matters. I stood there holding my untouched coffee, watching my sister prepare for the most important day of her life while she systematically carved me out of it. Nina, please, we can work this out privately. Her reflection's eyes met mine in the mirror, cold and calculating. Actually, we need to discuss your maid of honor speech. I've been thinking about what you should say. The other bridesmaids were scattered around the room, putting finishing touches on their makeup and adjusting their dresses. I waited for privacy that didn't come. I want you to tell everyone how proud you are of me, how happy you are that I've found success and love. I want you to celebrate my new life. The words were innocent enough, but the way she said them made my skin crawl. She wanted me to participate in my own destruction, to smile and praise her before she delivered the killing blow. And after your speech, she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that only I could hear, I'm going to take the microphone and tell everyone exactly what I think of our relationship. In front of 300 people, including Marcus's business partners and my new social circle. Nina, please, we can work this out privately. You'll give that speech exactly as I want, or I'll make sure everyone knows you're having a mental health crisis. Your nursing career won't survive the scandal. The threat hung in the air between us, and I realized she'd thought of everything. My job, my reputation, my future, all of it balanced on the edge of her whim. The other bridesmaids pretended not to hear, suddenly fascinated by their bouquets and makeup compacts. But I saw Caroline's satisfied smirk in the mirror, saw Madison's barely concealed excitement at the drama unfolding. I was trapped and Nina knew it. I fled the bridal suite and headed straight for my parents' room down the hall, my heart hammering against my ribs. Mom and Dad would listen. They'd help me reach Nina, help her understand that family mattered more than social circles. I knocked softly on their door. Mom, Dad, it's Elara. The door opened to reveal my father's face, but not the warm welcome I expected. His expression was tight with concern, almost wary. "Elara," he stepped back to let me in, but didn't embrace me like usual. "We were just talking about you." Mom sat on the edge of the bed, still in her robe, tissues crumpled in her hands. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes full of worry and something else, disappointment. "Sweetheart," she began carefully, "Nina told us about the stress you've been under. The episodes at work, the instability." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "Episodes? What episodes?" "The hallucinations," Dad said gently, like he was talking to a psychiatric patient. "The paranoid thoughts about people conspiring against you. Nina said you've been having breaks from reality." I stared at them, my mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I haven't had any episodes. I don't know what she told you, but—" "Honey, denial is part of the condition," Mom interrupted, reaching for another tissue. "We've been reading about it online. The stress of working with dying patients, the long hours, the isolation, it can trigger psychological breaks. Nina told us the stress of the oncology ward is causing you to have episodes, making you unstable. We don't want to hear your excuses, Elara." The words hit like a physical assault. My own parents, looking at me with pity and fear, believing lies Nina had carefully planted to discredit anything I might say. "Please," I whispered, "just listen to me. Last night at dinner, the way she spoke about me." "Was her trying to include you despite your condition," Dad said firmly. "She's been protecting you, covering for your difficulties. We think you should go home after the ceremony. Rest, maybe seek some professional help." I backed toward the door, my support system crumbling around me like sand. Nina hadn't just rejected me, she'd systematically destroyed my credibility with the people who should have believed in me most. I stumbled into the main hall where wedding coordinators made final adjustments to the flower arrangements. White roses and baby's breath transformed the space into something from a fairy tale, all soft light and romantic elegance. A stack of wedding programs sat on the gift table, ivory cardstock with Nina and Marcus's names embossed in gold. I picked one up with trembling fingers and scanned the wedding party listings. Maid of honor, Elara Japarids. Bridesmaids, Rebecca Ashworth, Caroline Mitchell, Madison Burke ***. I stared at my name under Maid of honor, but somehow it felt like mockery now. Nina had given me the title, but only so she could strip it away more dramatically in front of everyone. "Oh, you saw that." Caroline appeared beside me, adjusting her bridesmaid bouquet. She wore our grandmother's antique bracelet on her wrist, the delicate Georgian silver that had been promised to me since childhood. That's my grandmother's bracelet," I said numbly. Caroline glanced down at it with casual indifference. "Oh, this old thing? Nina said it was just some family trinket she didn't want cluttering up her look. She thought it would photograph better on someone with my skin tone." Family trinket. The bracelet that had survived Soviet occupation, that grandmother Ketavan had worn to her own wedding in Tbilisi, that carried the weight of 4 generations of strong women, reduced to a disposable accessory that clashed with Nina's aesthetic. I watched Caroline adjust the clasp with manicured nails, and something cold settled in my chest. Every slight, every humiliation had been calculated. Nina wasn't just rejecting me, she was systematically erasing our shared history, our heritage, our blood connection. The wedding coordinator bustled past with an armload of programs, and I realized 300 guests would see me listed as Maid of Honor, the role Nina planned to use as the platform for my public destruction. Rebecca found me in the hotel bar 30 minutes later, her face pale beneath perfectly applied makeup. The space was mostly empty, except for vendors coordinating final details and a few early guests nursing Bloody Marys. "Elara," she slid into the booth across from me, her voice tight with something between shock and disgust. "I need to tell you something I overheard." I looked up from my untouched coffee, noting the way her hands shook slightly as she reached for her purse. I was in the corridor outside Marcus's suite, delivering his boutonniere, and the door was cracked open. The groomsmen were inside, and they were rehearsing. Rehearsing what? Rebecca's perfectly glossed lips pressed together. Marcus was practicing his reaction, for when Nina, she stopped, shook her head. "God, I can't believe I'm part of this." Rebecca, what were they rehearsing? Your speech. The words came out in a rush. Nina's planned something for your maid of honor speech. Marcus was rehearsing how to look sympathetic but firm when she publicly cuts ties with you, in front of everyone. The bar seemed to spin around me. What do you mean, cuts ties? She wants everyone to look understanding when she cuts ties with her pathetic sister in front of everyone. It's all choreographed. Rebecca's voice dropped to a whisper. Marcus was practicing his lines about supporting Nina's decision to distance herself from toxic family members who were holding her back. I gripped my coffee cup so hard I was surprised it didn't shatter. She's going to do it during my speech. After, she's going to let you give your toast, then take the microphone and destroy you, publicly, in front of 300 people, including Marcus's business partners and her new social circle. There's more, Rebecca continued, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard. She's been telling people you've been unstable, spreading rumors about your mental health, your job performance. She's building a narrative that makes her rejection look justified. I thought about my parents' reaction, their talk of episodes and hallucinations. She's been preparing for this. For months, apparently, Marcus mentioned it's been part of her social transition strategy. Rebecca's disgust was evident. She's treating your relationship like a liability to be managed. The hotel bar suddenly felt too small, too warm. I needed air, needed space to process the systematic nature of Nina's betrayal. This wasn't impulsive cruelty, it was calculated destruction. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Rebecca's expression softened. Because I've known you both for years, and what she's planning is monstrous. You don't deserve this, Elara. No one does. But even as she spoke, I could see the conflict in her eyes. Rebecca was Nina's bridesmaid, part of the social circle Nina was so desperate to join. Warning me was an act of conscience, but I couldn't count on her support when the moment came. I was truly alone in this. I needed air, needed a moment away from Nina's suffocating presence. I slipped out of the hotel bar and made my way toward the kitchen service area, hoping to find a quiet corner to collect myself. The service corridor behind the reception hall buzzed with catering staff making final preparations. I pressed myself against the wall as servers hurried past with trays and linens, trying to stay out of their way. That's when I saw it. In the large garbage bin near the kitchen entrance, among the food scraps and discarded packaging, I spotted a familiar leather binding. My heart stopped as I recognized the worn cover of our grandmother's recipe book, the one filled with traditional Georgian dishes written in Grandmother Ketavan's careful script. I pulled it from the trash with shaking hands, food scraps falling from its pages. Beet stains and coffee grounds had already begun to damage the delicate paper, where our family's culinary heritage had been lovingly preserved for decades. Grandmother Ketavan's recipes, written in her own hand, thrown away like trash. As a first-generation Georgian American, I felt our entire heritage being erased. The words came out as a whisper, but they carried the weight of generations. This book had survived the Soviet occupation of Georgia, had traveled across an ocean, had been the foundation of every family celebration for 30 years. And Nina had thrown it away like garbage. I held the stained pages against my chest, feeling something fundamental break inside me. The bracelet had been painful. The program listing had been humiliating. But this was desecration of everything we came from, everything that made us who we were. Nina wasn't just rejecting me. She was rejecting our grandmother's memory, our father's stories of the old country, our mother's tears when she taught us to make khachapuri the way her mother had shown her. She was erasing us all. My phone buzzed as I stood there holding the ruined recipe book. Dr. Margaret Whitmore's name appeared on the screen, my mentor from the foundation board, the woman who had guided my philanthropic work for years. Dr. Whitmore, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Elara, dear, your sister called me worried sick. She says you've been having episodes. Perhaps you should step back from your foundation duties until you're feeling better. The words hit like a physical blow. Even here, even in the one space where I held real power and influence, Nina had reached out to destroy me. Episodes, I managed. Dr. Whitmore, I haven't had any episodes. I don't know what Nina told you, but... Sweetheart, she was very specific. hallucinations about conspiracies, paranoid thoughts about people working against you. She's concerned about your ability to make sound judgments, especially regarding grant decisions. Grant decisions. Nina didn't know about my role in funding Marcus's company, but she was systematically undermining my credibility in every area of my life. If the board believed I was mentally unstable, they'd remove me from my position immediately. I need you to understand, I said desperately. I am completely lucid and stable, whatever Nina told you. I'm sure you believe that, dear, but your sister knows you best, and she's genuinely frightened for your well-being. Perhaps we should discuss a temporary leave of absence when you're feeling more yourself. The line went dead, leaving me standing in a hotel service corridor, holding my grandmother's ruined recipes, watching my entire life crumble around me. Nina had won. She'd isolated me from my family, my friends, my colleagues, and my professional life. In a few hours, she'd complete her victory with a public humiliation that would cement my destruction while launching her into her perfect new world. But as I stood there in that corridor, surrounded by the debris of my demolished life, I realized something Nina had overlooked in her careful planning. She had no idea who she was really destroying. She saw only the dowdy nurse sister, the charity case, the embarrassment. She had never bothered to learn about the foundation board, about the grants, about the real power I wielded behind my modest facade. Nina wanted to publicly cut ties with her pathetic sister who couldn't evolve. She was about to discover exactly how much her pathetic sister had evolved, and exactly what she'd built her perfect new life upon. The wedding was in 30 minutes. Time to show 300 guests who really paid for this fairy tale. The chapel bells chimed 2 p.m. as I took my position at the altar, watching 300 guests rise in unison. The afternoon sun streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the white marble floor where Nina would soon promise to love and honor the man whose empire I'd built. The processional music began, Pachelbel's canon, played by a string quartet that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Caroline glided down the aisle first, radiant in blush pink silk, my grandmother's bracelet catching the light on her wrist. Madison followed, then Rebecca, each step perfectly timed to the music's rhythm. Then Nina appeared in the doorway, and even through my devastation, I had to admit she looked breathtaking. The cathedral train of her dress flowed behind her like spilled moonlight, and her face glowed with the kind of joy that made everyone in the chapel lean forward slightly, drawn to her radiance. I stood frozen at the altar, watching my sister float toward her future while knowing exactly what she'd planned for mine. Marcus waited beside the officiant, his face the picture of devoted love, completely unaware that his bride intended to destroy her own family before the reception ended. As Nina reached the altar and took Marcus's hands, I caught her eye for just a moment. She smiled at me, the same sweet smile she'd given me as a child when she wanted something, and I realized this was all performance to her. The wedding, the love, the family bonds she was about to sever publicly, all of it choreographed for maximum impact. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, his voice carrying clearly through the chapel's perfect acoustics, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Nina and Marcus in holy matrimony." I watch Nina promise to love and honor while knowing she's planned my public destruction for tonight's reception. The irony burns in my chest like acid. She's vowing fidelity to a man while planning the ultimate betrayal of her own blood. The ceremony continued around me in a blur of traditional words and sacred promises. I held my bouquet with steady hands, smiled at the right moments, and played my part in Nina's perfect day while my world crumbled silently inside my chest. The chapel emptied slowly after the ceremony, guests flowing toward the cocktail hour like a river of silk and expensive cologne. I remained in the front pew, still holding my wilted bouquet, staring at the altar where Nina had just promised to forsake all others. The silence felt sacred and terrible. Dust motes danced in the colored light from the windows, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear laughter and conversation as the reception began without me. My phone buzzed, a text from the hospital, "Mrs. Patterson asking for you, treatment going well, you saved her life with that early catch. Dr. Rodriguez." I stared at the message until the words blurred. For 15 years, I'd dedicated my life to healing. I'd held dying hands and celebrated recoveries. I'd made split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. My entire identity was built on the principle of first, do no harm. And now I was contemplating destroying my sister's life in front of 300 people. The weight of that moral contradiction pressed down on me like a physical force. I'd spent my career saving lives, and now I'm contemplating destroying them. What does that make me, a healer or a destroyer? I thought about the Hippocratic oath I'd never technically taken as a nurse, but had lived by anyway. The promise to use my knowledge for good, to protect the vulnerable, to heal rather than harm. Nina was planning to harm me, yes, but did that justify what I was considering? My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, speaking in accented English about the old country. Ketavan, when someone shows you who they are, believe them, but never become what they are. The chapel felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in as I grappled with the fundamental question of who I was and who I was willing to become. The foundation grant gave me power, real power to change Nina's life forever. Marcus's company would fold without the funding. Their fairy tale would crumble. But using that power would make me something I'd never been before. Not a healer, not a protector, something else entirely. I sat in that empty chapel, surrounded by the lingering scent of white roses and the weight of impossible choices, and felt my core identity fracturing like glass. The reception hall buzzed with elegant conversation as I finally made my way to the head table. Crystal glasses clinked softly, and the string quartet had been replaced by a jazz ensemble playing sophisticated background music. Nina held court at the center of it all, accepting congratulations and air kisses from Atlanta's social elite. I took my assigned seat, at the center of the head table as maid of honor, the place of honor that would make my upcoming humiliation even more visible to every guest in the room. The dinner service was already underway, servers gliding between tables with military precision. But something had shifted during my time alone in the chapel. The crushing weight of moral conflict was still there, but underneath it, something else was emerging, something cold and clinical and familiar. I watched Nina laugh at something Marcus's father said, her hand resting possessively on her new husband's arm, and felt my nursing training kick in. In trauma situations, there's a moment when emotion becomes luxury you can't afford. When the patient is coding and you have seconds to act, you don't feel, you function. The familiar calm of clinical assessment settled over me like a second skin. I cataloged the room with professional detachment, exits, key players, timing, resources. Nina's speech was scheduled for 30 minutes from now, right after the main course. My planned humiliation would follow immediately after. In the ICU, when someone's dying, you don't get emotional. You get precise. Tonight, Nina's social death requires the same clinical accuracy. I reached for my water glass with steady hands, noting the way the light caught the crystal, the weight of the silverware, the positioning of the microphone at the center of the table. Every detail mattered now. Every variable had to be calculated and controlled. Marcus leaned over to whisper something in Nina's ear, and she laughed, that musical sound that had charmed everyone since childhood. But I wasn't charmed anymore. I was assessing, measuring, planning. The servers cleared the salad course and began bringing out the main dishes. Filet mignon with truffle sauce, according to the elegant menu cards. 27 minutes until speeches began. I opened my small evening purse and touched the folded papers inside, copies of the grant documents I'd printed from the foundation database. Marcus Chen's signature on the application. My signature on the approval. The funding timeline that perfectly matched their relationship milestones. Evidence, documentation, proof. Nina caught my eye across the table and smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. She thought she was looking at her broken, defeated sister. She had no idea she was looking at a trauma nurse who just switched into crisis mode. In 26 minutes, one of us was going to flatline. And for the first time all day, I was betting on myself. The microphone feels surprisingly light in my hands as I stand before 300 wedding guests, their expectant faces turned toward me like flowers following the sun. The reception hall has been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables draped in ivory silk white roses cascading from towering centerpieces, and my sister glowing at the head table in her perfect dress. "Good evening, everyone," I begin, my voice carrying clearly through the room's perfect acoustics. For those who don't know me, I'm Elara, Nina's sister and maid of honor. I watch Nina's smile tight, almost imperceptibly, at my emphasis on the title she'd given me only to weaponize. I've had the incredible privilege of watching Nina grow from a determined little girl with big dreams into the radiant woman you see before you tonight. I pause, letting genuine warmth color my words. Nina has always been the dreamer in our family, and I've been honored to help make those dreams come true in ways both big and small. The guests smile and nod, charmed by what they perceive as sisterly devotion. Nina relaxes slightly, probably thinking I'm sticking to the script she expects. Marcus beams beside her, his arm draped possessively around his new wife's shoulders. Some sisters share clothes or secrets, I continue, my tone light and conversational. Nina and I have shared something much more significant, a bond that's shaped both our lives in ways that might surprise you. I catch Rebecca's eye across the room. She knows what's coming, and her face has gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup, but there's no stopping this now. Nina wanted a public forum for our relationship's end. She's about to get exactly what she asked for. I'm barely 4 minutes into my speech when Nina does exactly what I knew she would. Her champagne-flushed confidence finally overrides her patience, and she pushes back from the table with theatrical flourish. "Stop right there, Elara." Her voice cuts through the reception hall like a blade, amplified by the microphone clipped to her dress for photos. "Everyone needs to know, I no longer need charity from my poor sister. I've outgrown that pathetic life." The silence that follows is deafening. 300 guests freeze with champagne glasses halfway to their lips, forks suspended over their plates. This isn't the warm family moment they expected. This is something else entirely, something ugly and cruel that makes everyone shift uncomfortably in their seats. Nina doesn't notice the horrified silence. She's too intoxicated by her own performance, too caught up in the moment she's been planning for months. "I'm tired of pretending we're equals," she continues, her voice carrying that crystalline cruelty I've come to know so well. "I'm tired of letting her drag down my social standing with her dowdy appearance and pathetic nursing job. Tonight, I'm officially cutting ties with the life that was holding me back." She gestures dismissively in my direction, her 3-carat engagement ring catching the light. Some people evolve, and some people stay stuck in their small, insignificant lives. I choose evolution. The guests stare in stunned silence. Marcus tugs at her dress, trying to get her to sit down, but she's beyond his control now. She's drunk on champagne and cruelty, finally saying everything she's wanted to say for months. I stand at the microphone, watching my sister destroy herself with her own words, and feel something that might be pity if it weren't mixed with such profound relief. She's given me the perfect opening. I wait for the echo of Nina's words to fade completely before I speak again. When I do, my voice carries the calm authority I've developed through 15 years of delivering life-changing diagnoses to patients and their families. "Thank you for that perfect transition, Nina." I adjust the microphone slightly, ensuring every word will reach the back of the room. Since we're discussing charity, I should mention that as a board member of the Eliza Foundation, my charity includes the grant that built Marcus's company and funded this beautiful wedding. The reaction is immediate and electric. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Silverware clatters against plates. Marcus goes white as his champagne glass slips from suddenly nerveless fingers. "The Eliza Foundation," I continue, my voice steady and professional, specializes in medical innovation grants. We've distributed over $50 million in funding to promising cancer research companies like Oncological Dynamics Corporation. I turn slightly to address Marcus directly, noting how his confident smile has transformed into something resembling panic. "Congratulations on your wedding, Marcus. I hope you've enjoyed spending the $2.8 million I personally approved for your company 6 months ago. My signature is on the approval documents, dated the same week you proposed to my sister." The silence in the room has taken on a different quality now, Not horror at Nina's cruelty, but shocked fascination as the guests begin to understand the magnitude of what they're witnessing. My pathetic nursing job, I say, using Nina's exact words, apparently qualifies me to sit on one of the most influential medical grant boards in the Southeast. Who knew? Nina's face has gone from flushed to ashen. She's gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles are white, finally understanding that she's walked into a trap of her own making. I let the revelation settle for exactly 30 seconds, long enough for the implications to sink in, not long enough for anyone to interrupt. When I speak again, my voice carries the clinical detachment I use when explaining treatment options to terminal patients. Now, the Foundation takes ethics very seriously, I continue, pulling the folded documents from my purse. Particularly regarding misrepresentation in grant applications. Marcus, when you applied for funding, you listed your company's leadership team and key stakeholders. I unfold the papers slowly, deliberately, letting the rustling sound carry through the silent room. Interesting thing about your application, you failed to mention that your primary personal relationship was with a board member's family. That's considered a significant conflict of interest, requiring special disclosure and review. Marcus half rises from his chair, his mouth opening to speak, but I continue before he can form words. The grant's ethics clause is quite specific about misrepresentation and undisclosed conflicts of interest. We take these violations seriously because they undermine the integrity of our entire process. I look directly at him, my expression professionally neutral. Given this evening's revelations about the nature of your relationship with my family, we'll need to conduct an immediate ethics review. I pause, letting the weight of institutional authority settle over the room like a heavy blanket. Until that review is complete, and given the clear evidence of misrepresentation, I'm afraid your funding access will need to be suspended. I fold the papers carefully, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent room. Consider your access. Denied. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Around the room, I can see the business associates and investors who came to celebrate Marcus's success beginning to understand that they're actually witnessing his complete professional destruction. The domino effect begins immediately. I watch it unfold with the clinical fascination of a researcher observing a perfectly controlled experiment. Marcus slumps in his chair as the full implications hit him. Without the foundation grant, his company has no operating capital. The research stops. The employees get laid off. The country club membership, the designer suits, the 3-carat engagement ring, all of it built on funding that just evaporated in front of 300 witnesses. Nina turns to him with desperate eyes, finally understanding that her perfect new life was an illusion built on my signature. Marcus, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them she's lying about the grant. But Marcus can't speak. He's staring at me with the expression of a man watching his entire world collapse in real time. His business partners at table 12 are already pulling out their phones, probably calling their lawyers to distance themselves from the ethics scandal. Dr. Harrison from the Foundation Board catches my eye from across the room and nods approvingly. He understands exactly what's happening here, and his presence validates every word I've spoken. 300 phones capture the moment when Nina realizes her new fortune just evaporated. I observe quietly into the microphone, watching my sister's face cycle through denial, rage, and finally, devastating comprehension. The guests sit transfixed, witnessing the most spectacular reversal of fortune any of them have ever seen. The fairy tale wedding has transformed into a Greek tragedy, complete with hubris, nemesis, and total destruction. Nina's carefully constructed new identity crumbles like a house of cards. The social circle she was so desperate to join now stares at her with mixture of pity and revulsion. The woman who publicly rejected her family for their lack of status has just discovered that her family held all the real power. The irony is so perfect it feels almost scripted. By midnight, the reception has devolved into the kind of chaos that will be discussed in Atlanta social circles for years. Marcus's business associates cluster in the hotel lobby, their conversations hushed but urgent as they calculate the fallout from tonight's revelations. I watch from the bar as Marcus's mentor, Dr. James Patterson, the man who helped him start Oncological Dynamics, shakes his head in disgust and walks away mid-conversation. The ethics violation isn't just about money, it's about trust, integrity, and professional reputation. In Atlanta's tight-knit medical community, word travels fast. By midnight, Marcus's entire professional network knows his company was built on misrepresented foundation funding. I murmur to Rebecca, who's joined me for what might be the last normal conversation either of us has tonight. She nods, her face pale but resolute. I've never seen anything like this. The complete reversal, it's like watching someone's entire life rewrite itself in real time. Through the lobby windows, I can see wedding guests leaving in clusters, their conversations animated as they process what they've witnessed. Tomorrow, the story will spread through Atlanta's social networks like wildfire. Nina's name will be associated with this scandal forever. Marcus sits alone at the head table, still in his tuxedo, staring at the ruins of his wedding cake. The vendors are packing up around him, but he seems oblivious to the activity. His phone has been buzzing constantly, investors, partners, employees all demanding explanations he can't provide. Nina disappeared an hour ago, probably hiding in the bridal suite, finally understanding the full scope of her miscalculation. She wanted to publicly sever ties with her past. Instead, she's discovered that her past held the keys to her future, and she just burned those bridges in front of everyone who mattered. The justice feels complete, but strangely hollow. I've won, but the victory tastes like ashes and regret. 1 week later, I sit in my home office for the Foundation's Emergency Ethics Committee meeting, my laptop screen showing 6 concerned faces from across the Southeast. The formal review has been swift and thorough, the evidence undeniable. The documentation clearly demonstrates a pattern of misrepresentation and undisclosed conflicts of interest, Dr. Harrison states, his voice carrying the weight of institutional authority. Mr. Chen failed to disclose his relationship with board member Japarid's family, which constitutes a significant ethics violation under Section 4.2 of our grant guidelines. I listen with professional detachment as my colleagues discuss the case. They don't know about the personal betrayal, the years of secret support, or the wedding day humiliation. To them, this is simply a matter of maintaining institutional integrity. Dr. Japarid's, Dr. Harrison addresses me directly. Given your personal connection to this case, you're not required to participate in the final vote. We understand this must be difficult. I look at the faces on my screen, colleagues who respect my judgment, who have watched me make tough decisions about life-changing medical research for years. They're giving me an out, a chance to step back and let others handle the final blow. But this isn't about personal revenge anymore. It's about the integrity of the foundation, about ensuring that grant money goes to researchers who follow the rules and respect the process. Thank you for the consideration, I say calmly, but I believe my expertise is valuable here. The evidence clearly demonstrates a pattern of misrepresentation and ethical violations. I vote to terminate funding effective immediately. The words carry no emotion, no personal satisfaction. Just the clinical judgment of a medical professional making a decision based on evidence and institutional policy. Motion carries unanimously, Dr. Harrison announces. Oncological Dynamics Corporation's grant funding is hereby terminated with immediate effect. I close my laptop and sit back in my chair, looking around my modest apartment, the same space Nina dismissed as pathetic just a week ago. The morning sun streams through my windows, illuminating the framed photo of Grandmother Ketavan on my desk, her wise eyes seeming to approve of the justice that's finally been served. My phone buzzes with a text from the hospital. Mrs. Patterson's latest scans are clear. Complete remission. Thank you for catching it early. Dr. Rodriguez. I smile, remembering why I chose nursing in the first place. Not for power or recognition, but for the quiet satisfaction of healing, of making a real difference in people's lives. Nina never understood that some forms of success can't be measured in designer dresses or country club memberships. The foundation work will continue. The grant money will go to researchers who follow the rules and respect the process. And I'll keep showing up for my shifts at Emory, holding hands with scared patients and celebrating recoveries that matter more than any wedding reception. Nina wanted to cut ties with her past. She succeeded more completely than she ever imagined. But in destroying our relationship, she also destroyed the hidden foundation that supported her entire future. Some lessons, I've learned, can only be taught once. And some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt, no matter how desperately you need to cross back to the other side.
Elara, thank you for sharing your story of hidden strength and ultimate justice. It shows us how underestimating family bonds can shatter even the most perfect illusions, reminding us all that true power often hides in plain sight. Was Elara justified in her mic drop moment? Tell us in the comments, and if this moved you, like and subscribe for more. I'm Eliza Quinn, and remember, here on Wedding Day Justice, veils off, justice on.